Hi, I'm Daisy from Daisy Victoria, and today we're gonna play Let's Make a Hoop Skirt. It's a super fun game in which you are the winner of a hoop skirt. What is a hoop skirt, you ask? What a great question. A hoop skirt, also known as a crinoline, is used to hold out the structure of skirts. So historically, it held out the ball gowns, the big fancy ball gowns, and today it's still used to hold out the structure of ball gowns and other skirts. It is also used on the outside of garments for super cool costume and fashion stuff. This tutorial is for a cage hoop skirt, which means it's just the cage structure. There's no fabric on top of it. Now, if you feel like modifying it to put fabric on top of it, that's great, go for it. There is a bit of math involved in making a hoop skirt. That is because you want things to be exactly the right distance apart so that your structure is correct. I understand that sometimes the math is the most intimidating part. There is a link in the description for a pattern in which I already did the math for you, so you can go ahead and grab my pattern and you can just follow it, and then you don't have to do any calculations yourself. Alright, it's math time. So you're gonna need to know a few things before you can do your calculations. First of all, how long do you want your hoop skirt to be? Measure that. So you want to know that total length of the hoop skirt. You also want to know the circumference of your bottom rung. You also want to know the width or the circumference of your shortest rung. So make sure it goes out wider than your hips, basically. Now, you're gonna need to know how big each rung is. So if you only have two, it's really easy. If you're a little intimidated by the math, but you want to try it on your own, and instead of going for the one I calculated for you, I'd recommend two because it's easier. But if you want to go for all of them, you're going to need to find what's the difference between these two, and that's going to be divided here between 1, 2, 3, 4. So I need to divide that by 4, right? So the next thing you're going to need to calculate is where to place these vertical tapes. So I have 6 vertical tapes on this, which means that every spot where I place it is 1/6 of the total circumference of that rung. The next thing you need is how far apart vertically you're gonna put each hoop or each rung. So you're gonna take your total length and divide it by the number of hoops. So in this one, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you do it that way, then you're putting the waistband the same distance apart from the top hoop as you are each hoop. And that's honestly the easiest way to do it. You could do that differently, right? Like you could make this shorter or longer, whatever you want. The final measurement you need is your waist, and really you just want to make sure that your waistband goes all the way around your waist and has plenty of room to tie it off. Once you've done all of your calculations, make sure that you leave room for seam allowance when you cut these out. So on your bone casings, you might want to add like an inch so you can fold each one over 1/2 inch on the back. Leave as much as you want for your seam allowance. And the same thing with the vertical tapes, make sure you leave enough seam allowance that you can fold it over on the top and the bottom. But Daisy, what materials do I need to make my hoop skirt? I'm so glad you asked. You need twill tape or something to create the casings and the vertical tapes. Twill tape is nice because it's already finished on the edges for you. I recommend 1-inch twill tape. Now you can get away with thinner, like 3/4 inch. 1 inch is the most forgiving, so if you're a beginner, just get 1 inch. You'll be happy with it. You also need steel boning. You can buy actual hoop boning. Now, for a while they stopped making hoop boning, then they started again. Any steel boning, as long as it's flat and not spiral, flat steel boning is fine. So you can buy this in a continuous roll, and then you can cut off the amount you need for each rung in your hoop skirt. You're gonna cut your steel boning pieces anywhere from maybe 2 to 4 inches longer than the circumference of the rung it's going into. And that's so that it overlaps on the end and it makes a nice continuous circle. Now when you cut out your twill tape, you're gonna have one single piece for these vertical tapes. For For the waistband, you can do it with one single piece, or you can double it so you can have 2 pieces of twill tape, and that's, you know, just one on top of the other stitched shut. The bone casings are each going to be 2 pieces of twill tape, so 1 piece here, 1 piece on the back, and they're stitched together at the top and at the bottom. I prepared the bottommost hoop piece, like boning casing, so I've pinned here, so I sewed the front of it together and then I just pinned the back, so I'm going to leave it open so I can put the boning in there. And I'm going to sew across the top and the bottom, and then I'm just taking these pieces, the vertical pieces, to put them in there. So I'm pinning this all from the wrong side. So if you pin it from the right side, make sure you have it over top, so for the front it looks like that. Once you sewed those on the back side it looks like this. On the front side it looks like this. And I've got an opening here where I'll be able to place my boning when I'm done sewing the structure. So this is my bottom bone casing with my vertical tapes stitched to it. So the next one I've prepared just the same way I prepared the bottom one. So I've got pins holding it together, and I've marked with pins everywhere that I'm going to put a vertical tape. On the bottom one I was folding these vertical tapes over because it's the bottom, but here they're actually just gonna go right over the next one. Here are my bottom 2 bone casings done. So if you're only doing a 2 bone casing hoop skirt, then you're ready to move on to the top of it. If you're doing more, then you're just gonna repeat this process until you're done with your bone casings. Finally, to create the places where the vertical tapes are gonna go onto the waistband like that, you're gonna just fold this over and fold over the edge a little bit so that you'll be able to stick the waistband through. At this point in the process, you might have a big mess. That's okay. It is a mess with a purpose. So since I fed the waistband through the top, this is the waistband, and then each of these is one of my bone casings. So since I was making a long one, I have several bone casings. You may have fewer, that's okay. You should have exactly as many as you need. I have a tip for you about the tip of your boning. So this is going to be rather sharp when you just cut it off. You can make a hoop skirt with it sharp, you know, it'll work, it'll function as a hoop skirt. So I would say if you're intimidated, you could try it that way. But what I recommend is to put some sort of something on the end of it. So I've used tape before. It's kind of a quick hack that makes it a little bit smoother. They sell caps that go on the end of hoop boning. You can get, what I do a lot now is I actually use tool dip. So that's like the rubbery stuff you can put on tools you can get at the hardware store. And it's just kind of like rubbery, plasticky, and it smooths out the end. So that way it's not gonna poke into you or into the bone casing. Next, I'm going to insert the boning. Now, it's important that you cut the boning slightly longer than each bone casing, because that way you're going to get a little bit of an overlap at the edge and it's going to be more sturdy than if you didn't overlap it. You know, we kind of want to like not really sit in a circle. Okay, so where you had an opening, you just want to stick your boning in. Now, when you get it maybe halfway around, it's not going to want to feed as easily, and that makes sense because you're bending it into a circle. So if you just kind of help it a little bit, that'll get it going around the curves a little bit better. So I have fed my boning through, so you can see there's still like a tail hanging out here. So I'm just going to keep feeding that other end in, and then you can kind of push this one, and you want to keep doing that until it's all the way inside there, and then just kind of make sure that it's in. So yeah, that whole piece of boning is inside the hoop now. So just do that for however many hoops you have. And at long last, I've inserted all of my bonings into the hoops. So in this one I have 5, and now it stands out, yay! So to recap, first you need to know the measurements of your hoop skirt. Now you could purchase my pattern, and that's got measurements for you. So if you're doing the math by yourself, you want to measure the length of your hoop skirt and the circumference of the bottom and the top rungs or hoops, and then you want to find the distance between those so you know where and how wide to make each hoop in the middle, and then you want to make sure your waistband is long enough to go around you and tie. So then you want to sew your bone casings together, and you want to make sure that these vertical tapes catch on each one on the way down. You want to sew your entire structure before you put any boning in. So once you're done with it, insert all of your boning, and then your final step is to put it on and look absolutely fabulous. If you like this tutorial and you want to know more, there's actually an even longer extended version up on my Patreon with even more great hoop skirt tips and tricks. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, and you can find me on all the social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye!